Welcome back to more creepy videos, and let's dive in.
Oh, hell no! I'm a fucking cannibal?
Is this part of that investigation? Is that winding down at all yet?
It is indeed, Jeff. Take a live look behind me. This is what's left of the FBI evidence recovery team inside this car. And take a look at this vehicle. We believe this is the owner of the business just returning to take back possession of his business. More on that in a second. But take a look. Another busy day out here on Detroit's east side, just down the road from City Airport. Sources say they have removed several boxes of what is believed to be human remains. Sources say many people. This was a big operation. And get this, inside this business, a saw used to cut up bodies, it is believed. All taken away as evidence to the Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office, where it will be tested. This business is known as International Biological. It advertised as a medical educational service provider. The owner is Art Rathburn. He has a mortician license, has had in Michigan since 1982. But the big question is, did he get human bodies illegally? And was he selling them illegally? Just moments ago, the owner, we believe, showed up. I tried to ask him some questions. Mr. Rathburn, will you talk with us? What do you have to hide, sir?
Bodies? The fuck?
Now, sources tell me the FBI is not out here on a fishing expedition. Mr. Rathburn is not charged with any crime. He is not in custody.
Where's my mouth watering?
They did search
Love
Rose
McDonald's.
Point Park on Wednesday as well. Bodies that are not donated to
I'm a
science.
people eater.
This is shocking to the funeral home industry in Metro Detroit. We're going to have more on that part of this story next hour at 6. Jeff, Carolyn?
Well, Jim, obviously some extensive evidence gathering there. Are we just at the tip of the iceberg on this investigation, you think?
Could very well, and we're not clear on how long it's going to take to do the testing of what is believed human remains. But get this, you had a death in your family, you thought there was a burial or a cremation, and then you find out the body ended up here. Shocking, to say the least.
As always, guys, be sure to do your own research, but I did stumble across a few articles that stated through an FBI investigation they were able to link a food supplier with that company, though it didn't specify if the food supplier was associated or affiliated with McDonald's in any way. But it does take me back to a video that I seen over a decade ago where a rabbi was posting about where McDonald's meat comes from. And again, you know, one day you're there and you're burying your relatives or your friends, and then the next day you're chowing down a Big Mac that has your family's remains in it.
So one of my supporters just tagged me in a video of a woman cleaning up trash, and she seen a decaying bird, right? But this decaying bird had a chip in it. Now I know you thinking what I'm thinking. What the fuck does a bird need a mother chip inside of it for? You know, I always thought birds was, natural. No form of electricity. But apparently I was wrong. Because if you hoist your eyes to this decaying bird, you will see some kind of technology is inside of it. And we all know the conspiracy of the birds aren't real. See, now seeing shit like this, I don't know what to believe. Aren't the birds real? Aren't the animals in nature real? Are we living inside of a matrix? Are we living inside of a Truman Show? And then this doesn't make it any better that certain people are using bird drones. And now, we can't trust the birds. Maybe I'm just not seeing what I'm seeing. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this RoboCop go-go gadget ass bird in the comments.
Many of us are aware of the 1970s bird camera program where they attached cameras to pigeons and sent them out to take automatic photos during the Cold War, but this is different. And why would the government use, birds with chips inside them now to spy on us when they have all the technology today to do that? So my question here is, does someone deliberately place that pigeon there as a joke, or is this actual evidence of another spy operation?
I think it's all strictly crossbreeding humans with dogs and cattle and all that kind of stuff. And the stories of Nightmare Hall is true, and that's one of the levels. I think it's the 7th level where they have all the experiments gone wrong, but for one reason or another they don't want to kill them. So whoever goes down there, they hear the howling and screaming, and that's where all those terrible stories come from. When I met Cherry, she had seen the 7 black and white photos but not the videotape. The security guard allowed her to make a pencil drawing of the 25 black and white photos, not all of them, but some. And she handed me 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with her pencil drawing of what was in those photos. And I think there were 6 pages. And those are the ones she asked me to copy in felt tip black, which I did, identical to what she had. And those I released as the Dulce papers, and they became the infamous Dulce papers.
So as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of Son of Man. And even though this happened in the Dulce base in New Mexico, who's to say this isn't happening in bases all around the world? And the mythological creatures and the cryptids that we hear about and see, who's to say this didn't stem from those bases?
Energy harvesting.
Like the Matrix.
Right. After people do, they're drained of that positive energy that they have. It's because it's being ciphered out of them by evil spirits. And the positive energy we have comes from heaven because we're in the same race as the gods. Because of their lack
of good sentence.
Parasites are literally demons. Literally. When you think,
Are we going into the parasites
Yeah.
are definitely demons thing?
let's do it. They can do things a supercomputer can't do. Mice, and make mice sexually attracted to the smell of cat urine.
Yeah.
And so they'll go near where the cats are and get eaten.
Wait, what?
Yes. No, Cardin, this is a thing. You have parasitic mind control in animals. Like, there are animals that are, like, infected by parasites that control their behavior in order to get that parasite to be able to continue reproducing.
But then takes over its body post-mortem?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, does it control it before it rots or what?
You can see, like, zombie cicadas that are, like, falling apart. Their bodies aren't even really together, but this parasite takes over their nerve pathways and still makes them move around. They're missing half their bodies.
And the parasites infected an entire herd of deer at once. Right? Well, they're getting the deer to do all the exact same thing at once. So they go into their minds and they mind control them. And it's almost like they have this weird, like, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, where all the parasites are interacting with each other through the minds of these other animals at once and getting them to perform like a team. It's really weird. But then when these deer are dead,
Wow, look at that, bro. This is like legit. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I'm going to put some on the screen
That's
so people
wild.
can see. Deer literally just running, ba-doom, 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 and boom! Jumping straight off the bridge. That is absolutely gnarly.
oh, you see one deer just got taken out. Yeah, they just jump into traffic and stuff.
Rough.
These parasites are able to influence the nerves of these animals. And so the idea behind that is like, okay, maybe these parasites are related to demons in the way that, like, you look at these old records about demons being able to, like, influence your thoughts and get you to do things that you wouldn't normally be doing. It's because these parasites are influencing you to act in different ways than you normally would in order to continue their reproduction, right? And to continue their lives.
I mean, look, think about, and by the way, this idea of parasites getting into animals, making the animals kill themselves, Christ casting the spirits into the pigs, and the pigs all go kill
Well, yeah,
themselves
that's
in
what
the
I was
water.
going to say. This kind of sounds a lot like that. Okay.
Right. So,
And by the way, kosher law back in the day was protecting you from parasites you would pick up from eating pigs. That's why pigs weren't kosher, in part. That's one of the theories that people think is it was something that would be eaten, right? There's a way, it was a health code to keep you healthy. And so
Yeah,
maybe
keep you from all of these guys.
Yeah, and so
people who eat a lot of fast food are more likely to have parasites. People who, if you drink a lot of whiskey and tequila, I mean, you remember the whole "don't swallow the worm"?
What's that?
Don't swallow the worm. They would.
sorry, bro, I'm not involved in enough alcohol culture to know what that means.
they used to, up until like 2010, in like whiskey, they would have a worm at the bottom of the bottle, in like every single bottle of whiskey.
Really?
Yeah, Google "don't swallow the worm." You don't
That's
know.
disgusting.
Yeah.
That is absolutely
That is the
gross.
You never
grossest
know,
thing I've
yeah.
ever heard.
Don't-
This theory is so wild, but it makes sense. I mean, just look at the amount of parasites within our culture today who we would class as demons. Last year, NASA received over $25.4 billion in funding, and this is the kind of equipment they come up with and try to fool us with. And all the while that's happening, most of you guys in the States are actually struggling to make ends meet. I mean, just make it make sense.
In 1987, a nuclear incident occurred in Guyana, Brazil. It's considered one of the top 10 nuclear disasters of all time. On the night of September 13th, scrap dealers pillaged an abandoned medical clinic. They found a metal canister, which they stole in order to sell. Unbeknownst to them, the canister contained a highly radioactive substance that was used in cancer treatment, cesium-137, which is a vibrant powder that glows blue in the dark. Within the next 72 hours, both men were vomiting and developed skin irritations. One of the men went to the doctor, who told him he had just had an allergic reaction to something he must have eaten. And the other man went back and punctured the canister with a screwdriver, exposing the cesium inside. He then sold the pieces of the canister to a junk dealer, who was fascinated by the emanating glowing blue light. So he took it home and he called for his relatives and his family and told them that the substance must be powerful in some way, possibly even supernatural, or might even have healing properties. Over the next 3 days, many spectators came into the home. They took handfuls of the substance, they rubbed it on their skin, they handed it out as gifts, unwittingly contaminating everyone involved. Eventually, these people began displaying symptoms of acute radiation poisoning. There was vomiting, diarrhea, burning skin. They were losing hair, they had sharply reduced red blood counts, and damaged bone marrow. One little girl absorbed up to 3,000 rems after eating bread with hands covered in cesium-137. Eventually, she died as a result of the exposure. 100,000 people in total had to be monitored for contamination, with nearly 250 of them suffering directly from the poisoning and 4 dying within the first month of exposure. More than 40 area homes had to be demolished. Psychologically, the citizens of the area also suffered as they were in constant fear of contamination, and they were shunned by residents of neighboring cities. The remnants of this poisoning could be found up to 100 miles away. This disaster brought with it an awareness issued by the Atomic Energy Agency. Now, each radioactive source is labeled, licensed, and tracked from its development until its disposal.
It's tragic that this happened, and the medical facility really should have done a better job in disposing their equipment. But what I don't get is, why did they think it was a good idea to rub this biochemical over their skin, thinking it was going to be a health benefit?
Ancient Egyptian tombs inside the Grand Canyon, that's what an explorer found right before the government closed the area off from the public. Way back in 1909, the Arizona Gazette reported a story of a miner, G.E. Kincaid, looking for gold in the Grand Canyon. While journeying down the river, he came across what looked like steps carved into the canyon side, so he decides to check it out. The steps, he claimed, were perfectly carved, not a natural formation, and as he approached the top, he came across a man-made cave entrance, which do exist all around the Grand Canyon, but this one was different. He went inside, turned on his light, and saw tunnels chiseled with perfect architecture and more branching paths deeper inside. He kept going until he comes across an enormous room several hundred feet long. In the middle stood a giant statue of what looked like Buddha, holding lotus flowers in each hand. Now, Buddha has nothing to do with ancient Egypt, which actually makes this more of a mind trip, but we're getting there, I promise. This looks like it was an ancient underground city, which actually exists all around the world in places like Derinkuyu in Turkey. Kincaid was amped. This gotta be the discovery of the century, so of course he leaves and asks for funding to explore more from the Smithsonian, the world-leading Museum Research and Education Institute, the gatekeeper of archaeological findings, made by the US government, who gladly agree. They send a team of scientists and miners led by S.A. Jordan to fully excavate this mind-blowing discovery. With this team backing the expedition, Kincaid goes back to the caves and realized he barely scratched the surface. He left extremely detailed journal entries describing the whole excavation, with hallways up to 12 feet wide and large oval doorways throughout the underground complex. During this excavation, they find full-size rooms which appear to have been made for dining, winding halls with detailed architecture, and artifacts like pottery, urns, and to their surprise, copper tools and swords, along with rooms built for metalwork. All signs of an ancient civilization far more advanced than what should have been here at the time. But then they find this: Egyptian hieroglyphs carved and painted on the walls, and stone tablets with similar hieroglyphs engraved. And then finally what appeared to be a crypt, filled with little cubby holes in the walls, each containing mummies of giant humanoids, some some even being reported as reptilian looking. Yeah, Egyptian tombs in the Grand Canyon. They call this complex the Citadel, and by the end of their expedition, hundreds of rooms were discovered, estimated to house up to 50,000 people. They determined that, of course, this must be the remains of an advanced civilization that were here before the natives, and somehow brought the knowledge of the ancient Egyptians from the other side of the world into the Americas. G.E. Kincaid and S.A. Jordan presented their Egyptian hypothesis to the Smithsonian, who obviously did not like the sound of that and denied further excavation. Egyptian hieroglyphs spotted outside of Egypt? Absolute nonsense, right? Maybe, but this isn't the only time that such a claim was made, like the Gosford hieroglyphs carved into rock in Australia, which look almost identical to that of the Egyptians. It's hard to tell exactly how old they are, but of course they're labeled a hoax. Someone else carved them here a few years ago to trick the world. Or the written language of the Micmac, a Native American tribe that lived along the Atlantic coast, which shares a baffling number of similarities with Egyptian hieroglyphs, two cultures that allegedly had no contact among each other. This one was just a coincidence, of course, just like the Fuente Magna bowl found in Bolivia with Proto-Sumerian cuneiform script writing on it. That's ancient Mesopotamian writing uncovered in South America. So artifacts of ancient Middle Eastern civilizations found in the Americas have happened, but we just ignore them. To this day, the Smithsonian denies this expedition in the Grand Canyon ever happened. And the stories of the explorers are of course deemed a hoax. So is any of this real? The native indigenous people seem to think so. Native American tribes like the Navajo, Zuni, Acoma Pueblo have legends of a race that existed there before them, even citing the Grand Canyon specifically as the place where the first people emerged from. These myths all speak of either a race of reptilians, yes, we're in lizard people territory now, or giants that civilized the area, building underground cities to protect themselves. The Hopi tribe even have a story about a sky god who, after a series of cataclysms, emerged from a moving star and took the tribe to underground caves in the Grand Canyon region to protect them. The Havasupai people believe the canyon is the home of the Supai, the spirit of their ancestors. The Paiute culture got the legend of the Havmusups, who also lived in an underground city and had silver tubes that shot lightning that could end a man's life and silver canoes in the sky, which all line up perfectly with the flood myths, not to mention UFO sightings, around the world where godlike beings descend from the sky and gift civilization to humanity. And is exactly why the Smithsonian cringes at the thought of admitting to this, because it would imply that cultures like the ancient Egyptians had overseas contact with the Americas, completely destroying their current narrative of isolationism, which states that groups of humans evolved independently of each other all around the world. Today, this section of the Grand Canyon has some interesting official names for the formations found here, like the Tower of Set, Horus, Isis Temple, Ra, the Cheops Pyramid, all Egyptian names, and these formations have the weirdest, most interesting shapes, unlike those found in any other canyon. Alright, enough yapping. Where is this cave, and can't we just go to it today to prove this once and for all? Really thought it was that easy, huh? The exact area where the Citadel would be found has, of course, been marked off limits by the government. The Grand Canyon has hundreds of man-made caves all over it that are confirmed real, with only 30 that have been officially mapped out, some of which are sealed with steel gates for safety. When amateur explorers tried checking out the region, planes and helicopters would appear out of nowhere over areas designated as no-fly zones, some claiming they can even spot remnants of pyramids and other ancient structures in the cliffs of the canyon, implying the Grand Canyon may actually be the site of a bustling ancient city. Rumors of ancient Egyptian remains in underground cities in the Grand Canyon, government closes the area off, and then planes and drones are found scouting the area. Are they hiding something from us, or am I just gonna get stitched into another Mr. Know-It-All debunking video?
This is one big giant rabbit hole that once you dive into, you're going to find it very hard to get out of. And I do believe that Egypt does have connections to the Grand Canyon and beyond. And if there was no truth to it, then why would the military or the government make sure that these are off limits to the public? I also think that there's a lot more information and a lot more secrets than we know, and that we'll never actually find out.
There is this article that I published back in 2003 presenting the simulation argument. This is an argument that tries to show that at least one of three propositions is true, although it doesn't tell us which of these three. The three propositions in question is first, that almost all civilizations at our stage of technological development go extinct before they reach technological maturity. So that's the first possibility. A second possibility is that there is a very strong convergence among all technologically mature civilizations, in that they all lose interest in creating ancestor simulations, as I call them. These would be very detailed computer simulations of people like their historical forebears, detailed enough that the simulated people in the simulations would be conscious. So the second possibility is that they just lose interest in doing this. And the third possibility is that we are almost certainly living in a simulation. So there's this argument that shows that one of these three is true. And the full argument involves some probability theory, but the basic idea can be grasped quite simply, which is that suppose it were the case that the first possibility did not obtain. So then some non-trivial fraction of civilizations at our stage eventually reach technological maturity. Then suppose the second possibility also does not obtain. So some non-negligible fraction of those mature civilizations are still interested in using the resources to running ancestor simulations. You can then show that because each mature civilization that devoted some resources to this purpose could run astronomical numbers of ancestor simulations, you can show that if the first two possibilities do not obtain, then there will be many, many more simulated people like us than there will be non-simulated people like us. In other words, almost all people with our kinds of experiences would be living inside simulations rather than outside them, if the first two possibilities are false. And conditional on that, we should therefore think we are probably one of the typical simulated people rather than one of the exceptional non-simulated people. So the structure of the argument then is that if you reject the first two hypotheses, then the third one follows, which then means you can coherently reject all three. That's the structure of the simulation argument.
I have my own beliefs in regards to the simulation, this matrix that we live in, but in relation to yourselves, do you agree with Nick's theory?
Did this teacher expose a plot to dumb down every person in America? Well, in his book, Dumbing Us Down, he claimed that there is a hidden curriculum inside every public school in America, and that the #1 lesson is that truth comes from authority. So you can only repeat what the teacher says or what's in the textbook, or you're wrong. And that this is reinforced by provisional self-esteem, because they want you to believe how smart you are is determined by whatever letter the teacher puts on that test. And that schools foster an intellectual dependence, because the only assignments you work on for 15 consecutive years are those given by the teacher. I mean, think about it. Why do students never choose their work? Why do they never follow their interest and work on the things they want to pursue? Because school prepares you to be an employee and nothing more. Now compare that to homeschool. Parents allow children to follow their interest and to learn in whatever style works for the child. So your child could learn financial literacy, pursue entrepreneurship, study the things that will actually make them independent. They could learn about bees if they want, the benefits of honey, and even start a bee business as they take courses in marketing, or painting, sketching, graphic design, public speaking, science, the Bill of Rights, the Founding Fathers, the Constitution. You can follow their interest and let them learn things that are actually important. Check.
There was another lady who had same kind of psychic driving that I did, and she was a very wiry, slender lady, and with lots of pep and zip, you know, and she'd go to the dances and this and that. And one day she just wasn't there. And when we asked where she went, they said, oh, well, you know, she's gone to another hospital. Well, sometime later, I was in the day hospital, and I happened to ask a nurse if she'd heard what had happened to this lady. And she said, oh, that's her sitting over there. And I looked, and there was a fat lady that just looked like she was made out of dough. She didn't know me. She didn't know herself. She didn't know anybody. She was gone. Now that's a death.
It was sad to hear how unethical those cases were, and it's even sadder to hear how they turned out through these stories. But what's even sadder is that mind control is more prevalent in today's world more than ever.
What's up? How was work?
It was okay. How are you?
Because
Smash that like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and I hope to see you again on the next video. But until then, much love and take care.